Welcome back to the Dark Reading News Desk here at RSA. Terry Sweeney here with Dark Reading, and I'm happy to welcome Vamsi Koduru, Director of Product Management at Normalyze. He's joined by Abhinav Singh, Head of Security with Normalyze. Gentlemen, thanks for being here today.
Happy to be here.
We are talking about the top 10 use cases for data security posture management, DSPM. Rather than go through a set of questions, both Vamsi and Abhinav have proposed a top 10 rapid fire. So we're going to do a little bit of mashup of David Letterman and Brene Brown all in one here at RSA. So DSPM is obviously a hot category where security is concerned. Let's just dive into this rapid fire list of the kinds of use cases or projects that are driving the need for DSPM. Abhinav, number one, kick us off.
Sure. So as the term says, DSPM, very focused on data, keeping data as the heart of all the security problems is what we are envisioning right now. And moving forward with all the new technologies that are coming up in the AI space and so on, data is really becoming a foundational aspect of those things. So thinking about securing them, thinking about a long-term strategy on how you want to make sure that your sensitive data is protected, you are compliant with all the regulatory standards which are out there, and making sure that we help you enable your business securely. Keeping data as the heart of this whole movement is how we envision this. New platforms like co-pilots and things like building up data lakes and new data platforms that are emerging quickly out there. So having a holistic approach, securing them is how we look at this.
Absolutely. I mean, the volumes of data that are being talked about with regard to like LLMs is astonishing.
Exactly. Yes, and we are pretty sure this is just going to grow a lot more exponentially as we talk. Probably terabytes of data already generated.
Vamsi, your turn. What's number two on the list?
Yeah, I think one of the big things is, do we know who has access to my data based on what type of data it is, right? A lot of businesses we've seen don't have full visibility into even what types of data is being created day to day, who is accessing it, changing it, sharing it. And these are really the things that drive effective data security policies, right? Is I want to secure the right types of data to be accessed by the right individuals. And other solutions haven't really given that level of confidence or even visibility for a business to lock things down, right? There's a lot of innovation that's happening now. You don't want to hamper that by not having the right security tools in place. And we're seeing DSPM kind of solve a lot of these problems is you are finding even those data stores or documents or files you didn't even know existed, but also having the confidence to go, these are going to surface any potential violations or things that are being overprivileged or overshared. And that's a huge level of trust that these businesses need to adopt things like, we talked about Copilot or even using more SaaS applications, which really are pushing the envelope of data democratization and sharing things rapidly, right? Which is a huge change from where we were 5-10 years ago, where everything was locked down behind enterprise data center. So and it's a huge shift that we're seeing.
Sure.
In that regard.
I know from covering storage that most organizations are pretty terrible at categorizing their data.
Right.
I don't know if things have changed much or if somehow like the security industry has better entree into that, but how big a challenge is that for customer organizations?
Yeah, I think it's huge, right? And I think part of it, data classification has obviously been around for a very, very long time, but these weren't all designed to solve kind of the unique problems that we're having today, right? You compare like a legacy data classification solution, they're not even as effective as some of the newer breed of solutions that are coming out today, right? Because they're too broad, they require a lot of manual input, they need you to go in and train and tune the system, tag things. They're not using a lot of the new AI or technology that's going to help you identify these things automatically or learn over time. So it's kind of really a shift from manual intervention. Some things are being done for me, kind of that feedback loop that's slow and cumbersome, to now more pseudo real time, large volume analysis. And you have, obviously with OpenAI and all these things being available to everybody, every business has access to tools that solve these problems today. And now it's kind of bringing in the context of security and access that really fills that puzzle in, right? It's not just classification by itself, but let's bring in the full picture and take a holistic analysis of where we are with categorization, but also the access piece, which is super important.
Abhinav, back to you with number three, data lake security and management. What's up there?
So Data lake, as the term says, you're trying to build up a central warehouse of all the data that you have. So if you have challenges classifying your data upstream, when you build up that data lake, you'll have the same challenges moving downstream as well. So what we have been seeing in the industry is that with all these data lakes that have been built up that collect data from different sources, different individuals within the company will have different levels of access to all these different resources. The question that comes in is when all that information is collected into a central warehouse, into a central data lake, how do you govern the access over there now? You don't want to overlap the access. You don't want to just accidentally expose certain information that some individuals in the company should not have, and so on, because every information is divided based on need to know kind of basis. That's the logic that is implemented across industry. So when these platforms are being built up, and there is like a huge demand, everyone wants to really build up that consolidated data lake, whether it's for security, whether it's for better analytics, and so on. So having a good hold of that whole data visibility problem, whether it is upstream or whether when you're building up a data lake, I think that becomes really crucial.
Thanks. Vamsi, number 4, organizations are apparently looking to implement zero trust. What's happening there?
Yeah, so obviously the approach to zero trust is how effectively can I enforce access, right, based on different permissions or roles or what have you. But the unique position that DSPM is really driving around zero trust is you can take this approach with a data first mindset, right? So I don't necessarily want to say everyone that's an admin or a CEO of my company should have access to everything. I want to look at what types of documents, what types of files, and then govern the access that way. And this is where that data first security approach really comes in to drive, zero trust architecture is you now know, hey, I have a patent document that we're producing. I only want these 4 individuals to have access to it. They might not all be admins, they might not all be C-suite, but they're the direct contributors, right? That level of granular approach lets you actually def- have a long-term effective program, right? Because you're not just blanket restricting access, you're not blanket granting access. You have that fine-grained control, which is, I think, super beneficial both for innovation, as we talked about earlier, but also in terms of ultimately driving better security programs, right? So
Is this like an element of like digital rights management being extended to security and, as you said, to a really granular level?
yeah, you could think of it that way, right? Is it's essentially, for example, like let's say me and Abhinav were working on something top secret. Yeah, I know him and I should have access to it. I don't necessarily want that coming out to, let's say, my sales team or someone else who's in the C-suite, right? So it's the same thing, is being able to have an effective pipeline where you can define these policies. Say, hey, we've categorized these types of documents. So all patents, I know that only these individuals or these specific groups or roles that I've created internally should have access to that, right? So it really lets you paint that nice full picture and also automate some of these things, right? So in digital rights management, you might not have that level of automation. It's more manual again, right? So in these, you can kind of combine the best of both worlds, do access governance, but also do it from um, the classification piece, right? Which I think is a huge driver.
Great. Um, Abhinav, back to you. We're looking at unusual data access patterns. Can you describe more what's going on there?
Sure, Terry. So unusual data access patterns. One thing that comes in my mind immediately is anomalies, detecting anomalies in how your data has been accessed and so on. Anomaly detection has been for a while using machine learning to detect unusual patterns, maybe large downloads, large deletes, and so on. Um, Now, with newer technologies coming out, one way to look at it is how do we really extend that anomaly detection technology to the next level so that we can cater to the demands of these huge data generation, these new problems that we are seeing. So some of the things that I have been really trying to get my head around is areas like using predictive knowledge. If there could be a way by which we can predict anomalous data patterns before it happens. So that is one way by which you would try and foresee how you can solve that problem 2 or 3 years down the line. So that's one thing that comes in my mind. Other examples would be around zero trust. That I guess is another great use case. Zero trust so far, like the whole industry, the whole security landscape has focused a lot on the networking aspects, the access aspects, and so on. Those things are still there. I'm not saying we can replace that, but as we get down the stack, further deep down is where data lives. So maybe having a downward to upward approach towards zero trust, where you start looking at the data and start expanding it outside, and start correlating other events, is where it will. I guess that would be the next avenue to look at in case of anomalous data events.
Vamsi, we're on number 6, real-time data hygiene. What's driving DSPM there?
Yeah, so when we think about the data landscape today, right? You have so much data that's being created every single day, and it really ties into visibility and how do you react to it, right? How do I know that sensitive document wasn't created, shared, and then now this is all running wild for a whole day, right? So one thing that we've noticed is businesses want to have more of those pseudo real-time alerts or some sort of solution that's going to help identify these things as they happen instead of waiting for an end of month review or waiting for end of week where it's almost too late, right? The current way we see things is no one is happy waiting end of the month, right? Damage is already done. Cost of breaches are too high. So businesses really want something that's going to be near real time, whether that's notifying yourself in 15 minutes, as it gets happen, as it gets shared. These are all things that are going to be huge drivers because as and more AI services and applications come into the picture, this problem is just going to multiply, right? So how do you kind of address this ahead of time, move more towards proactive security instead of reactive security, which is kind of what traditional solutions are really focused on, right? So,
Thank you. Abhinav, big data access projects, another apparent driver of DSPM.
Yes. So it kind of aligns with the data lake problem that we just touched on. So big data projects, again, you're trying to combine information from a lot of different sources, and you're trying to build up a central repository where all that information comes in, and then you from there on do analytics on top of it, and then so on and so forth. Lots of big players, big technologies around it. So what becomes really crucial is, again, understanding how that information should be accessed, and if there are any anomalies over there, making sure that the right people have access to the right kind of information, and really having a lineage of how your data has flown through into your big data technology or your data lake technology. By lineage, what I mean is that probably the data got generated through an application. From that application, it went into a production data store. From there, it went into a backup, and from there, it ultimately made it to the data lake or the big data technology. So having that lineage, and making sure that you retain certain metadata at all these levels, things like who had access to it when it was in production, who had access to it when it got backed up, and so on, and really carry forwarding that all that information so that it can really assist. Even like I wouldn't say that we would treat DSPM as like a silver bullet to solve all your data problems. There's still a lot of hygienes that the customer has to follow. There are a lot of things that the product has to focus on, not just look at data as one-off event, but look at how it has grown, what is its complete life cycle, and then connect all that information together to give a better picture when you're dealing with things like data lakes and big data technologies.
Thank you. Vamsi, integration before, during, and after a merger or an acquisition. Yeah. This is a big headache for companies, isn't it?
it is. One of the biggest gaps most companies have is if I'm buying somebody, how do I know that their security program's on the same level as mine? How do I know that there's not any landmines that I'm going to stumble upon or compliance issues, right? So where we really see DSPM helping with M&As is you can kind of use it as an auditing tool as you're going through the process of due diligence. Can I figure out, hey, what types of data does this business have? Are there any things that they themselves are unaware of? How do I know who I'm getting in bed with before I've already signed on the dotted line, right? There's a lot of value that you can get by using DSPM during an M&A to kind of bridge your knowledge, but also give you some confidence in terms of building a plan for post-merger, right? How do I know where I might potentially have compliance issues? Can I get them to remediate it before I acquire? There's a lot of additional value that you have by implementing a process through DSPM from the moment you kick off an M&A, right? It addresses a lot of that headache, and even the same thing comes down to access monitoring. You've now brought two teams together. Are they going to get the same roles and privileges that people of similar level in your company do? Is that something you want? This all then ties back into things we were talking earlier about ZTA and being data driven in terms of access, right? So all of these things kind of drive an effective program and solve a lot of the extra costs or pains and things that draw out in M&A as well, right? So you can kind of make a quick decision, which is huge.
I imagine, especially if there are public companies involved, that whether it's regulators or shareholders, that the presence of a DSPM program could actually be really sweeten the deal for everybody.
It can, and it all comes down to building confidence, right? How do I have confidence that I know what I'm getting myself into? And you, if you're, especially like you said, as a public company, I know that if I've established a secure data program, I'm more likely to be okay that I can trust what's being told to me, right? Because I can verify. It's the whole trust but verify, and DSPM does that for you. It's like your assistant on the side, right? Giving you all the insights that you need that even humans might not have access to because there's just too much data, too much information to parse. And you can't hide from a DSPM solution, right? You can't put a document somewhere
It's like the
where only one
IRS,
person,
right?
right? Exactly. You can't hide from it. So that really builds that extra trust and a layer of even just protection, right? For both companies.
Thank you.
So.
We're in the home stretch here. Abhinav, number 9, cloud migration projects.
Cloud migrations, yeah, I would say that could be a great reset point to start with. The reason why I say is that you probably had some legacy data stores. You're now moving them to cloud and so on. This could be a good starting point to have a DSPM integrated really early on. Um, Two things. First, it will help you classify and understand what your legacy data is about or was about. And then you can decide when you're migrating it to cloud or to a new service altogether, which data stores should you focus on? Where should your primary security resources should go into? Some of that information might be created as public information, so probably they just need to be somewhere else, versus some that were really sensitive, your customer information, they should be under high security data stores that you should put in. That's the reason why whenever I get this term about migration, I would say that's a great reset point. You can reevaluate your data strategy. You can think about, we can only connect our dots moving backwards. So if you are a data security person in charge of a company that is undergoing migration, you can just connect your dots backwards, saying that, okay, these were some of the problems that we faced when we were on-prem or when we had our data in legacy data stores. Now we have a chance to migrate it. So what are some of the forthcoming problems that I can foresee? What are the upcoming technologies that I can use, how they can better assist me so that moving forward, I can address some of the challenges that I previously faced.
That's great. Vamsi, take us home. Number 10, risk quantification. How does that weigh in with DSPM?
Look, I mean, ultimately, when we talk about risk quantification, everyone wants to know, where do I focus my efforts, right? How do I know the impact of all these different vulnerabilities that my business is going through? And one of the things that Normalize has done is we've kind of tried to quantify things with monetary value assessments, which, based off of historical breaches, cost of compliance, we look at a multitude of different things to at least give our customers insights into, hey, this is the areas you should be starting off with. How do you know that this isn't just noise, right? Some way to kind of do that impact analysis. Because otherwise, you're just be another tool that's creating alert volume. No one knows where to start. Your team might be investing resources, remediating a bunch of different potential vulnerabilities, but then you realize, shoot, this actually doesn't have that much sensitive data in it, right? Whereas your time it could be spent better if you say, hey, this has 80% of your valuable data sitting in this one data store, and I have 10 risks here. Let me focus on those, right? Like that makes a lot more sense and even convincing your team to buy into investing time and resources.
Or your boards of directors.
Right, exactly. Because that's one of the big things that you hear all the time is, hey, we've invested so much time and money into our data security program. How do I prove to my bosses that we're actually delivering meaningful impact to the business, right? So finding some way to quantify, hey, I've done this work. This is how much data I've secured. This is the potential monetary benefit that my business has now, whether that's through risk reduction or securing of my crown jewels. That's extremely valuable for both getting buy-in, but also giving yourself like that confidence, right? Hey, I'm doing valuable work. I'm securing the most valuable assets for my business and not just doing day-to-day mundane tasks, right? Which no one likes to do, and it becomes hard to sell if you can't justify the returns that the business is getting, right? Because data security solutions have been evolving constantly. You're buying so many different things to fill your gaps. At some point, there's going to be the question, hey, is this actually useful? And that's where risk quantification, in some way that you can do that impact analysis, says, yes, it is. This is why. This is what we've done over the past 6 months, 12 months, but also where we should focus more on. So I think that's really extremely valuable today if you want to be a successful long-term program is, can you justify that to your customers? Can you give them something to really piggyback off of and also sell to their own teams, right? So.
Right. Gentlemen, thank you for counting us down. I think we're all thinking differently about DSPM now. Thank you for joining us on Dark Reading News Desk.
Thanks, sir. Happy to be here.
We've been talking with Vamsi Koduru and Abhinav Singh of Normalyze. This has been Terry Sweeney for the Dark Reading News Desk. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.